I want to pick back up our conversation of Psalm chapter 3. So join me there, Psalm chapter 3, and let's read it together. This is a short psalm. It's 8 verses. We're going to talk about the first 2 verses today, and we'll pick it up in verse 3 tomorrow. The title of the psalm says, A Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom his son. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which say of my soul, There is no help for him in God, Selah. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of mine head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill, Selah. I laid me down and slept. I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. This is, I just love this psalm. This is a story. There's a story behind this psalm, I'll say that. And it is about when David was running from his own son, Absalom. The story can be read in, I'm trying to find the cross-reference. I want to say it's 2 Samuel 15, and I'm looking for it, and I can't find it. I just had it in front of me. I don't want to get it wrong, and so I'll revisit that with you tomorrow. But at the end of David's reign, David reigned around 40 years, I think, if I'm recalling this extemporaneously, 40 years. Toward the end of his reign, there was a coup attempt. Absalom, his son, had sat in the city gate and built all kinds of political relationships and alliances, and he had amassed favor amongst the people, so much so that there was growing sentiment against David, to the point that he was driven from his throne. He was driven from Jerusalem, and he became an exile. And by all accounts, he is writing this psalm. He's recording his experience emotionally and spiritually as he is in exile. And so, big picture, this psalm really has 3 parts. Verses 1 and 2 is really a moment of distress. Verses 3 through, let me see here, about verse 3 and 4 are rest. So distress to rest. Verse 5, there's rest. Verse 6, there's this awakening with fresh confidence and vigor and deliverance, salvation and new energy. And one of the big takeaways for me for this whole psalm, before we get into verses 1 and 2, is just the seasonality of our hardships, our emotional distress, that we go through times. I'm going to talk about this in our new sermon series, Rhythms, that there is a pattern to going into the dark seasons of life, walking through the dark seasons of life, coming out of the dark seasons of life, the depletion of energy, the restoration of energy, the depletion of hope or vision or joy at times, and the replenishing of it. And I don't know how you're feeling today, but I know that David did the right thing here. He is completely discomfited. He's completely flummoxed by his life circumstances. At the end of his life, he never expected to face what he's facing. His own son rising up against him, opposing him. His own friends turning their backs on him. It was tragic. It was traumatic. And it happened at a time of life where he would just not have expected this. Okay, it would have just come out of left field. And you think of this season of his reign just coming in for a nice gentle landing, but there's this sudden jolting, this sudden turmoil at the end of his reign. And he's reigned faithfully, consistently. He's been a good king. Relatively speaking, he's been a godly king. The trauma, the distress, the conflict with Absalom is born out of some family problems that David didn't deal with. But the extreme rising up, the uprising against him by his own son really wanting him dead and wanting to take over his throne, It's a tragedy that this man at this point in his life has to face this. But David does the right thing. First of all, he's been through these seasons before. He has written about them before in the Psalms. So he knows what to do. He's not glad he's here in this moment, but he knows where to go. He knows that God's brought him through things like this before. He's no stranger to hardship. He's no stranger to running for his life. He's no stranger to exile. I mean, imagine this. He ran for his life before he became king, and from Saul, and there was many years that he was in exile before he was restored to Israel and then made king. But here it is. It comes back around. He's got to run for his life again. And typically we think of security, we think of, we work our whole lives to build into secure seasons and moments. And we just don't imagine that security coming undone. And that's what happens with David. But what does David do? What is this psalm? In essence, this psalm is David processing a difficult circumstance, a tragic circumstance, literally the bottoming out, the bottom falling out is what I mean to say. Everything coming undone. Everything that was secure in David's world comes undone. Everything that was predictable becomes unpredictable. And suddenly his own throne, he can't even get back into his own hometown. The nation he has served so faithfully has turned their backs on him. At least it seems that there are so many against him. And so he does the right thing. He goes to God. And my friend, I don't know what you're up against today or what the new year looks like to you, but I know this, whatever it holds, it probably holds some challenges we're not expecting. And we need to prescribe, we need to preempt the challenges of the new year with our prescriptive response. How will we respond the next time things come undone? And that's what David teaches us to do. And he starts in verse 1 with the first word, Lord. He goes to the Lord. Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. I think we say it, we think it, we've heard it so many times it can become trite or trivial. But my friend, there's nothing trite about this practice. There's nothing that ever gets old about this practice. With every new challenge, we need to return to our God, who is already walking before us into that challenge, who has already approved, filtered that challenge through his providence and through his strength, and is waiting for us to call out to him, to cast ourselves in dependence upon him. It's actually the challenges of our lives that call us to the faith that so deepens and strengthens us, that so reveals God to us, that so proves his existence and his reality in our lives. It is those challenges that force us to faith, that force us to stretching and building the muscles of faith. It is those challenges that call us to the actual experience of God. Without any challenges, you would know, you may know about God, but you wouldn't know him and you wouldn't experience him. It's those challenges that call us into the actual experience. So David goes to God, and David cries out to God, and David expresses to God his perception of things. Now, his perception isn't entirely true, but he's crying out to God through his view, his perspective. He's airing his view of things. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? This is kind of a complaint. It's kind of a grief, a mourning. God, I'm in so much trouble. God, I feel so much grief. I feel so much sorrow. Lord, what's wrong with me? Maybe would be your cry. Lord, look at the terrible situation I'm in. That's what David is saying. And he's crying out about the number of people that have increased against him, that are growing stronger and stronger. He might have thought at first that this was a small uprising, but in time it was so big and so overpowering that he had to run. How are they increased that trouble me? So David is expressing to God that he is in trouble and he's being troubled. Many are they that rise up against me. So again, he's talking about so many people coming against him. Many there be which say of my soul. These people are talking about David. They're slandering him. They're scorning him. They're talking behind his back against him. They're gossiping against him. And what are they saying about him? They're basically saying God's turned his back on David. If God didn't intervene to save him while he was in Jerusalem, if God didn't intervene to save him while he was in his throne, then why should God intervene while he's running for his life? I mean, clearly the favor of God has left David. That's what they're saying. And isn't that what we are tempted to think as followers of God? When things go badly, the first thing we think is God turned his back on me. God's let me down. God's disappointed me. God's failed me. David knows this isn't the case, but this is what people are saying to him. This is what the word is traveling, and it's getting back to him. It's threatening to get into his head, okay? And this is what Satan does. He's the accuser of the brethren. He lies to us about who we are, about where we are, about what's happening. He lies to us about our experiences, and he lies to us about God. And so David knows what to do. He runs to God with the accusations against God. God, they're rising up against me. I'm in big trouble. I am troubled in my spirit, my soul. And these people are saying, you've forsaken me. God, there's no help for me in you. And then this word Selah, which is a musical term of rest and probably a key change. So it's a pause. It's a catch your breath in the music, in the poem. And then it's kind of a turn in the music that's probably going to change keys and change cadence coming into the next part of the psalm. We're going to leave it here today, but I'll just say David's teaching us. He's teaching us, number one, that life, even when we think it's stable, it can come undone. He's teaching us that we need to be prepared for it to come undone. And when it does, when those circumstances of life are even people rising or turning against us, or the loss of friends or relationships that we thought were secure, and they say things about us that are not true, whatever the circumstance, that we are to run to him, cry out to him, take the lies that we're hearing and thinking and imagining and put them before God. God, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. This is what people are saying about me. And leave it there for a minute and catch your breath. Because what's going to happen next is God's going to start changing your perspective. So, my friend, preemptively prescribe for yourself a response to God. Prescribe for yourself how you will respond when things start to come undone, or when people you love turn against you, or when you feel like everything is not going the way you anticipated it going. Preempt that experience with this prescription. I'm going to cry out to my God. I'm going to tell him what I'm experiencing, what I'm thinking and imagining. I'm going to tell him what people or what Satan is telling me about him. And then I'm going to Selah. I'm going to catch my breath. I'm not going to react. I'm going to wait for God to lead my thoughts and my responses through this.